One afternoon in Galilee, Jesus and his disciples were walking through a marketplace when they saw something that made them stop. A woman was screaming at a merchant. Not arguing, screaming. Her face was contorted with rage over something trivial, a few coins in dispute. But her eyes, they weren't hers anymore. They were empty, distant. And the energy coming off her was heavy, oppressive, feeding on everyone around her. Peter turned to Jesus and asked, "Master, there's something using her. How do we stop it? How do we help her?" Jesus watched the woman for a moment, then said something the church would spend centuries trying to erase. You don't cast it out. You silence it. When an archon operates through someone, it needs two things: their voice and your reaction. Remove either one and it loses power immediately. I'm going to teach you how to remove both. Not through ritual. Not through exorcism. Through recognition and declaration. And when you do this, the archon goes silent. It can't speak through them anymore. And without voice, it has no power. That teaching never made it into the Bible. The church removed every reference to archon silencing because if Christians knew they could neutralize demonic manipulation in people around them without priests, without holy water, without institutional intervention, what would they need exorcisms for? What would they need the church for? The entire system of spiritual authority collapses when protection becomes this direct, this accessible, this undeniable. But the Gnostics preserved it. Hidden in text the church tried to burn. And tonight, you're receiving what Jesus taught to the chosen ones 2,000 years ago. Not exorcism. Not banishment. Silencing. The technique that makes archons lose their ability to speak through people around you. And they fear this more than anything. Because once you know how to silence them in others, they can't use your closest relationships as weapons against you. If you're silencing archons in people tonight, comment, "They have no voice right now." Before I give you the exact technique Jesus taught, you need to understand what's actually happening when someone you know suddenly attacks you, drains you, or manipulates you. Because most chosen ones make the same mistake. They think the person is the problem. They think, my mother is toxic. My coworker is narcissistic. My partner is controlling. And they try to fix the person, set boundaries with the person, or cut off the person. But here's what's actually happening. It's not the person. It's the archon using the person as a portal. Archons can't interact with you directly in material reality. They exist in frequencies adjacent to physical dimension. So they need vehicles. And the most effective vehicles are people you already have emotional connections with. Your family. Your friends. Your romantic partners, your coworkers, anyone you've opened your field to through relationship. Because once you have an emotional bond with someone, you've created an energetic pathway. And archons exploit that pathway. Here's how it works. The archon attaches to the person's energy field, usually at the solar plexus or throat chakra. And it waits for specific moments. Moments when you're vulnerable. Moments when you've just had a spiritual breakthrough. Moments when you're about to make a move toward your purpose. And then it activates. It floods the person with thoughts, emotions, impulses that aren't theirs. And the person, not recognizing the manipulation, acts on them. They say things they wouldn't normally say. They attack you over issues that don't matter. They escalate conflicts out of nowhere. And you, because you love them or trust them, you engage. You defend yourself. You argue back. And that's exactly what the archon wanted. Because the moment you engage emotionally, you've opened the energetic channel. And here's why you recognize this when most people don't. You're pneumatic. You're a chosen one. You've been sensing this your entire life. That feeling when someone you love suddenly turns on you and something feels off. That moment when you think this isn't like them. That recognition, that's not paranoia. That's not you being overly sensitive. That's your divine spark perceiving what's actually happening. Most people can't feel the difference between someone being genuinely upset and someone being used as a weapon. But you can. You always could. You just didn't have language for it until now. So how do you know when an archon is speaking through someone? There are specific signs, and you've probably noticed these your whole life without naming them. First, sudden energy shift. The person goes from normal to hostile in seconds with no reasonable trigger. Second, disproportionate reaction. They're furious about something trivial. The emotional response doesn't match the situation. Third, eyes change. When an Archon is actively using someone, their eyes go empty, or distant, or they get an unnatural intensity. You've seen this. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Fourth, they say things that aren't them. Phrases they don't use. Attacks aimed at your specific vulnerabilities with surgical precision. That's the Archon accessing information about you and feeding it through their voice. And fifth, afterward they don't fully remember or they backtrack. They'll say, "I don't know why I got so upset." That's them returning to themselves after the Archon disengages. You've been seeing this pattern your entire life. In your family. In your friendships. In your relationships. And you've probably felt crazy because no one else seemed to notice. No one else could see that the person wasn't fully present during those attacks. But you saw it. Because you're chosen. Because your perception operates at a frequency most humans can't access. And that perception isn't a curse. It's preparation. Because now, tonight, you're learning what to do with what you've always seen. Jesus saw this happening constantly. People being used as weapons against each other. And he taught the chosen ones something the church couldn't allow. He taught them how to silence the Archon using the person. Not exorcise it. Not banish it. Silence it. Because when you silence an Archon's ability to speak through someone, the attack stops immediately. And you're about to learn exactly how to do that. Now I'm going to give you the exact technique Jesus taught for silencing Archons operating through people around you. But first, I need to tell you what not to do. Because most people's instincts are exactly wrong. When someone attacks you and you sense Archon manipulation, your first instinct is probably to confront it. To say you're not yourself right now. Something's using you. To try to make them see what's happening. Don't do that. The moment you externalize the recognition, you've given the Archon something to work with. It will use the person to deny, to gaslight, to escalate. Your confrontation just gave it more fuel. Second instinct, argue with the content of the attack. Defend yourself against what they're saying. Explain why they're wrong. Prove your point. Don't do that either. The content doesn't matter. The Archon doesn't care if you win the argument. It cares that you engaged, that you reacted emotionally, that you opened the channel. As long as you're arguing, it's feeding. Third instinct, try to cast out the Archon. To command it to leave in Jesus' name or whatever authority you think you have. Don't. Exorcism requires conditions most people don't have. And attempting it without proper understanding usually just pisses off the Archon and makes the attack worse. So if you don't confront, don't argue, and don't try to cast it out, what do? You silence it. And silencing is different from all of those. Silencing doesn't engage the Archon. It doesn't fight it. It removes its ability to function through that person in that moment. And here's how. The technique Jesus taught has 3 components. Each one is critical. Miss any piece and you're back to normal interaction with an Archon-influenced person. But do all 3 correctly and the Archon loses voice immediately. First component, internal recognition. You have to identify what's happening in your own awareness without externalizing it. When the person starts attacking, manipulating, draining, you say to yourself silently, internally, this is not them. This is Archon using them. You name it. Not out loud. In your mind. And that recognition shifts your frequency immediately. You stop reacting to the person. You stop taking it personally. You stop feeling hurt or angry or defensive. Because you've identified the actual source. It's not your mother being cruel. It's an Archon using your mother. It's not your friend betraying you. It's an Archon using your friend. The person is a vehicle. And once you recognize that, your emotional reaction to them dissolves. You're no longer in victim frequency. You're in observer frequency. And that shift is critical because Archons feed on emotional reactivity. The moment you stop providing that, you've cut off half their power. Second component, visual anchoring. This is where most people mess up. They either avoid eye contact completely, which signals weakness and lets the Archon escalate. Or they stare into the person's eyes trying to see the Archon, which creates intensity that the Archon uses as connection. Neither works. What Jesus taught is this. You look at the person. But you don't look into their eyes. You look at the point between their eyebrows. their third eye center. And you focus there. Not aggressively. Not trying to do anything. Just seeing. You're looking at them, but you're seeing through them. And this does something the Archons can't handle. It breaks the illusion. When you look into someone's eyes during conflict, you're engaging person to person. Human to human. That creates resonance. The Archon can work with that. But when you anchor your vision at their third eye and see through them, you're not engaging the surface level anymore. You're perceiving beyond the material. And the Archon feels that. It feels you seeing past the person directly toward it. And it destabilizes. Because its primary weapon is invisibility. Operating hidden behind the person's identity. The moment you see through that, it knows you know. And that knowing shifts the power dynamic instantly. Third component, internal declaration. While you're holding that visual anchor, while you're seeing through them to the Archon using them, you speak 3 sentences. Not out loud. In your mind. Silently. But with absolute certainty. With the knowing that you are not asking, not hoping, not trying. You are declaring reality. The 3 sentences are, I see the Archon. Not the person. The Archon has no voice here. That's it. 9 words. 3 statements. First statement, I see the Archon. You're naming what you perceive. You're confirming your recognition. You're establishing that you know what you're dealing with. Second statement, not the person. You're separating the individual from the entity using them. You're refusing to conflate the two. You're holding space for the person to still be innocent even as you address the Archon. Third statement, the Archon has no voice here. This is the key. This is the silencing. You're not saying the Archon has to leave. You're not commanding it to go. You're declaring that in this space, in this interaction, in this moment, it has no ability to speak. No ability to use this person's voice as its weapon. And because you're speaking from sovereign frequency, because you've already shifted out of emotional reaction and into observer awareness, your declaration carries authority. Not religious authority. Not borrowed power from Jesus or God or any external source. Your authority. The authority of a chosen one recognizing an Archon and refusing to allow it voice. Jesus combined these 3 components into one fluid technique. Recognition shifts your frequency. Visual anchor destabilizes the Archon's cover. Declaration removes its ability to speak through the person. And the moment you complete all 3, something happens. The person's energy changes immediately. They lose momentum. Their voice shifts. The words stop flowing. They might pause mid-sentence. They might suddenly look confused. They might change the subject entirely. Because the Archon just lost access to their voice. It's still attached. It's still there. But it can't speak anymore. You silenced it. Not through force. Through recognition and declaration. And without voice, without the ability to use that person's words and emotions as weapons, it has no power in that interaction. Here's how you use this in real time. Someone attacks you. You recognize internally, Archon using this person. You anchor your gaze between their eyebrows. You declare silently, I see the Archon. Not the person. The Archon has no voice here. And immediately you'll feel the emotional hook release. The person's energy will shift visibly. They'll lose momentum, look confused, or suddenly change tone. That's the Archon losing voice. You don't explain what you did. You just observe the shift and continue or end the interaction naturally. Here's what you need to know about using this in real situations. You don't prepare in advance. You don't need special conditions. Someone starts attacking you, manipulating you, draining you, and you execute the technique while it's happening. Internal recognition, visual anchor, silent declaration. The entire process takes seconds. And you never explain to the person what you did afterward. Don't say, an Archon was using you. They won't understand and you'll create an opening for it to re-engage. Just let the interaction end naturally. The silence did the work. That's enough. And here's how you know it worked. 3 things happen immediately. First, you feel the emotional hook release. Whatever they said that was designed to hurt you, guilt you, anger you, it stops landing. You're not affected anymore. You feel detached, clear, observing instead of absorbing. Second, the person's energy shifts visibly. They lose momentum mid-sentence. Their tone changes from aggressive to confused. They might look suddenly tired or say something like, I don't know why I'm so upset about this. That's them returning to themselves after the Archon loses voice. Third, if they try to re-engage the attack, it's empty. No power behind it. Mechanical. Like they're reading lines they don't believe. And within seconds or minutes they give up entirely. Because the Archon realizes you're not providing the energetic response it needs and the person it's using is too exhausted to keep trying. This validation is instant. You don't wait days wondering if it worked. You know in the moment. The hook released, the person changed, the attack collapsed. And once you've experienced it, once you've watched someone go from hostile to confused in seconds because you silently declared the Archon has no voice, you'll never question whether this is real again. This is technique. This is power. And it works every single time you execute it correctly. You need to understand who can use this technique. Only pneumatics. Only chosen ones. Hylics can't distinguish between a person and an Archon using a person. They just see the person attacking them. Psychics might sense something's off, but they can't hold neutral frequency under assault. They get emotionally flooded and react. And the moment you react emotionally, you're feeding the Archon. You can't silence what you're feeding. But you're pneumatic. You can perceive Archon manipulation and hold sovereign frequency simultaneously. That's what makes you dangerous to them. You don't just see. You can act on what you see. And this technique was designed specifically for you. Critical warnings. First, don't weaponize this to win arguments. This is for genuine Archon manipulation only. You'll know the difference. Archon attacks feel invasive, disproportionate, wrong. Real conflicts feel uncomfortable but not invasive. Second, never explain what you did to the person afterward. They won't understand and it creates an opening for the Archon to re-engage through their confusion. Third, some relationships will dissolve after you start doing this. Relationships where Archons were the only connection holding you together. That's not loss. That's liberation. And fourth, genuine relationships will actually get stronger. Because you're removing the interference. You're clearing the static between you and people who truly matter. The Archons fear this technique more than any spiritual practice you could do. More than prayer. More than meditation. More than any protective ritual. Because this technique removes their primary attack vector. People you're close to. Your family. Your friends. Your co-workers. Your partners. Archons don't usually attack you directly. They attack you through others. They use your emotional bonds as highways for manipulation. They weaponize intimacy. They turn your closest relationships into energy harvesting operations. And most people never realize it. They just think, why is my family so toxic? Why do my friendships always end in betrayal? Why do my romantic relationships drain me? They never see that Archons are operating the people around them like puppets. But you see it now. And you have the technique to stop it. Not by cutting people off. Not by building walls. By silencing the Archons using them. And when you do that, when you consistently silence Archon manipulation in people around you, you become unreachable. Not because you're isolated. Because the Archons can't use proximity against you anymore. They can't turn your mother into a weapon. They can't use your best friend to drain you. They can't manipulate your partner into sabotaging your purpose. You've closed the access point. Not by removing the people. By removing the Archon's ability to speak through them. And that's what the church couldn't allow. If Christians knew they could neutralize demonic manipulation in their relationships without exorcisms, without priests, without institutional intervention, the entire system of spiritual authority collapses. You don't need someone else to protect you. You have the technique. You are the protection. And once you know how to silence Archons in others, you're operating at a level of spiritual sovereignty the church never wanted you to reach. If you're using this technique tonight, do 3 things right now. First, comment they have no voice below. Declare your sovereignty over Archon manipulation through others. Let other chosen ones see that you recognize this and you're activating this tonight. Second, subscribe to Divine Codes because advanced techniques for recognizing Archon attachment points, clearing spaces, and protecting groups are coming. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover they can silence Archons operating through people around them before this teaching gets suppressed again. Do all three now. Your declaration matters. Then tonight, when someone attacks you, manipulates you, or tries to drain you through emotional warfare, remember, it's not them. It's the Archon using them. Don't argue. Don't defend. Don't react emotionally. Recognize internally. Archon is using this person. Anchor your gaze. Look at them but see through them. Focus between their eyebrows. And declare silently with absolute certainty. I see the Archon, not the person. The Archon has no voice here. And watch what happens. The attack collapses. The person loses steam. The Archon is silenced. Not banished. Silenced. And silence is more powerful than any exorcism. Because when the Archon can't speak through them, when it has no voice, it has no weapon. And without a weapon, it's powerless. Use this tonight. They have no voice.